Ah, good stuff. Good morning, good morning. How you guys doing? You alright? You have a good, good little break? Good rest? Yeah, good man. We don't where I'm in the UK, we don't celebrate the 4th of July like the Americans, but yeah, nice. It was good. It was good. Can't complain. Can't he complain? Did a little bit of trading yesterday. Took a massive 5 handles on ES. Living the dream. So I thought today, this morning's sesh, we could do an advanced session on SMT. Because the trade today at this Asian session was as clear as cut as it could be using SMT. And if you were inside Red Pill yesterday, you'll know that I was looking for 92 as my terminus. I've woken up this morning going, why on earth did I not put a sell at 92? But you live and learn, right? You live and learn. So yeah, we're going to go through SMT. We're going to go through an advanced session on SMT and break it down so you guys know how to use it. So have a quick look at my trades yesterday in the amazing range that we were gifted yesterday, in that expansive price we had yesterday. These are my trades. Woo! Woo-hoo-hoo. Look at the range on those puppies. Look at the range. But my target when I re-entered, so I got in here at 88, got out 91.25 when price hovered on these highs, and NQ took this high, and we'll break down that in a minute. But also got back in here inside this fair value gap, and I was targeting 92, which is where I was going to go short. And I'll tell you exactly how I knew where price was going to go. So just give me 1 second, guys. I just need to get a drink. I'll be back. I've got dry mouth.
Listening to your voicemails, writing out the notes, is pretty time consuming for customer facing teams. So what if your business phone could make it a whole lot easier to browse through, find, and organize your voicemails? There are 2 ways to access transcriptions in your phone app. Firstly, navigate to the History tab in the bottom bar of your phone app. This is where you'll find your voicemails along with all your open the transcription script icon to the right of the relevant video.
Okay, so who struggles with SMT? Who struggles with it? Who struggles with it? Does everyone have a basic concept of SMT? What is SMT? Does everyone actually understand it? Or do people just avoid it like the plague? Hands up. Hands up. Basic. So there are various different ways to trade with SMT. And I have done a video on YouTube on SMT, which I highly suggest you watch, because it gives you my 3 strategies in the way that I use SMT. But one of them we're going to go through today is how I use SMT as a confluence in search and destroy conditions, right? And honestly, if you take notes and you study this, because I highly doubt you're going to get this straight away, right? It takes time in fighting charts, and it requires patience in terms of waiting for a trade to set out. And there's a lot of moving components to it. It's quite techy, but for those of you who know me, you know that I trade search and destroy a lot, and I top tick and bottom tick a lot of the time, search and destroy. Well, this is essentially how I do it, right? So search and destroy is a beast in itself, and you don't have to trade it if you don't want to, but it's personally my bread and butter. But what we're doing with search and destroy, and we're going to start with search and destroy very, very basically, and then we're going to move into SMT, because they both work hand in hand, right? With SMT, and this is a very brief overview because I gave a detailed breakdown inside of Red Pill yesterday, is that we're looking to work with inside a range, and inside that range we're going to have inefficiencies and imbalances in price, right? And what we know is that price is going to fill those inefficiencies in price. And what it's going to do is engineer liquidity and then tag that liquidity in the form of a turtle soup, right? So what you're looking for, a classic hallmark, is when inefficiencies are left open, price will run into those inefficiencies or those order blocks, and then it will revert to the opposing side. So you can see, if you look at my trades yesterday, this is essentially what I was doing, right? I was running down, filling the inefficiencies, hitting the order blocks, going to tag the other side, right? Now, if you remember in the morning, if you were trading with me live, you'll know that I was, for this trade here, which was this 88.50, which was when I re-entered here, I was looking for 92. And there was a very clear reason why I was looking for 92, right? Price ultimately didn't get there in the day's trading session. I just cut it here, but ultimately it ran it in the Asian session before dumping, and now we're down at the sort of 80s level, right? So what we're looking at is, first and foremost, is playing liquidity tag in search and destroy, right? But there's a way that we can find out which direction it's going to go and where it's going to go to. So first and foremost, we know that price is going to want to fill all of the inefficiencies inside of search and destroy. So we have a bias for price to move up to come and fill this SIBI on the 1 min. And we're always targeting the order block just above it, right? Inside of this leg, which has inefficiencies and imbalances within inside it, right? Now, this is where we can go to the SMT and start breaking down the price action in this and how we could have got to 92 for a short, right? So this looks like a massive head F, right? And I get it, but it's advanced. This is advanced SMT. Right, so this is advanced SMT. There's no other way of cooking it. It is, right? So if you're new to SMT, this is going to look like a car crash. But over time, and the more time you study this, you'll get it. And this happens a lot. It happens a lot, all right? And it's how I trade it, okay? So in the morning session, we had this high formed on ES. We have the same high here on NASDAQ, and we have the same high here on YM, on the Dow Jones, right? So I'm referencing these highs exactly the same time. Where was each of the indices at that specific time, right? And we can see that ES failed to take this high into that fair value gap that I was talking about previously, right? It failed to get into this fair value gap. So it left it open, right? But what had NQ done? NQ had turtle suit this high. Now, this is an indication for me when ES is creating relative equal highs to get out of the trade, right? When price does this on NQ. First and foremost, NQ is the turtle suit king, right? It loves to turtle suit before breaking down, right? So if you see this, this is already a hallmark of when you'd want to be looking to get out of this if you were anticipating higher prices, right? This is when you get classic resistance, when you have these divergencies on the highs and NQ does a turtle suit, right? That's the first takeaway, right? This is when this turns into classic resistance, right? But then I'm looking at this as an overview. So we had these highs, ES didn't take them, left that fair value gap that was just above it. NQ took the highs. This is the same on YM, right? So YM hadn't even got up to the highs. So we had a huge divergence. In fact, they were uncorrelated at this point in time. But what I'm now looking at is, okay, so we have the highs. I know what the highs are, and I know NQ's taken the highs. What has happened on the lows? And this is where I revert to the lows. Okay, so the lows, I'm looking at this reference point. And you're probably asking, why am I taking that specific reference point? I'm taking a pivot low. A very, very key pivot low. So the same principles of market structure shifts, that is just, you know, bog standard ICT concepts, right? So this low was taken on ES. YM hadn't taken this low, right? But NQ hadn't taken this low, YM had taken this low. So ES and YM had, NQ hadn't. So what I'm now looking to do is wait for either side, either buy side or sell side, to get taken first, and then I'll take price to the opposing high or low that hasn't been taken. Guys, that is the crux, okay? And it's complex, and I'll go through it again. So at this point, right, so when price was here, right, so when NQ was here, all that had happened is that NQ had taken this high, but ES had taken the low. So can you see how we have a divergence between the highs and the lows? We had NQ taking the lows, but we had ES, so we had NQ taking the highs, but ES taking the lows, okay? So you're kind of in no man's land. What I'm looking for is one of or the high or the low to get tagged, and then I will look to go to the opposing side. So the low which ES took was this low, and as price had already turtle suited on the high, I was waiting for NQ to run the low that ES had already taken, right? So when price got down here, I was calling this live inside of Red Pill. I was saying that 44 needed to hold for ES to come and run the highs, okay? So what I was looking at was this specific low that we had here, right? This low. And it's the exact same low that we have here. So ES had already taken this low. NQ had not taken this low. And in fact, YM was basically doing what ES was doing. So I'm just talking about these two, but you want to throw this into the mix as well. So when price on NQ ran down and took this low, I'm now looking for ES to hold this low. Why? Because it doesn't need to run this low, because it has already taken this low, which is the low that NQ is running to take. I know, guys, this is advanced SMT and your brain is probably already scrambled, but we'll go through it again. And we're still not done. Okay, so I'm looking for ES and YM to now show what? Relative strength. Because I'm looking for NQ to come and tag this low. Now, we can throw in one other thing to play catch up. Exactly, Ainsley. Now what I'm looking for on NQ is for NQ to respect a point of interest, or they're technically known as a point of origin, right? Now, a point of origin is where previous accumulation has taken place and displacement has moved out of it. So that is where institutional smart money has accumulated. Okay, so price, when it comes back to that level, you're likely to see that level respected. Okay, so if we just jump onto NQ and we go back to what time was it? Let's have a look. 10:38. Right? We were here. Right? So you can see this accumulation, this is reaccumulation, and then we had the displacement out, right? So this was accumulation, smart money reaccumulation, right? And we had this pump up. So this point of origin, I was looking to be respected for price to show signs of continuation. If this level had cracked, then my thesis for price running to take that high in that day's session was probably invalid. Why? Because it's more likely to drag ES down to take this low. And at this point, I'll be then looking for a deeper discount with still this high in mind. However, this held, and I called in red pill, 44 needed to hold in order for ES to come run these highs in that run. So in that session yesterday, okay? But we obviously had the overnight session. Now, what had happened with NQ, but what ES hadn't done? So NQ has now fulfilled its objectives by taking this low, which ES had already taken. So what was left open? What was left open was the high on ES, which as we know was this 1 minute fair value gap. Right, so this is my terminus for yesterday, which happened in the Asia session today. Right? Now, once price has reached that, what has now happened? And we don't need NQ to take this high. We don't need NQ to take this high. Because because NQ has already taken this high here. It had already taken it. So the exact same premise on the lows, we're now reverting to the highs. So NQ doesn't need to take this high. We're looking at this high. This high that ES didn't take. So now ES has come and taken this high, right? And what did YM do? Literally turtle suited this high. What do we now have? Morning, Marius. What do we now have? Anyone? What do we now have now that ES and YM have taken this high? Right? They're all now in confluence. Right, so they're, as Ainsley's quite rightly said, they're all now free to go run down into a discount and tackle the lows, the sell side, right? Because they've all fulfilled their objectives of taking the highs. Right? Now what does my eye run to? My eye runs to what has been taken on the lows. Okay, so what happened in the PM session yesterday, the overnight session? Well, this low that was here was taken on NQ. Right? Where was ES? Right, where was ES? ES was having absolutely nothing to do with it. Why? Because it was running to go and take that high. So now they've all taken this high. Where am I looking at? This low. The low that NQ has already taken. Okay? And look how price ultimately came around this low. Okay, so you could have taken from 92 down to 86 as a partial, and then held runners down to deeperpedia rates, right? But this is how I trade search and destroy so effectively. I literally hate it when it does this. It's so annoying. Anyone's got an idea why it does that? It's real annoying. Right, I got a solution for you. I got a solution for you. Get off, boy! Okay, so does everyone understand that? Do you get that? Do you want to go through it again? Right. Honestly, guys, if you get this, it's a goddamn game changer. Right? It's a game changer. I'm telling you, it is a game changer. I can literally trade off this chart. Right? Just purely using SMT during search and destroy. So many people get scared of search and destroy. It doesn't have to be that way. Okay, so we'll go through it again. So first and foremost, let's rewind even further. With search and destroy, we have to know the context when we're likely to get search and destroy. Now you guys should now know the list of when you're likely to anticipate search and destroy type conditions, right? After a huge range day, big range day during Asia and London, high impact news event, big news coming out later in the week, and we're in Wednesday PM session. All of these, there's a whole list of them, and they're inside Red Pill Uni if you're a Red Pill member, so you can always dig into them. But if you know that you're inside of search and destroy type conditions, you just play search and destroy. It's very, very simple. Okay, so what you're looking to do is take a range with inefficiencies and imbalances within inside it. So a pivot high and a pivot low, okay? You can take any range you like. I'm personally using this range because this range was in between 50% and the upper high of the previous candle, right? This is going even further advanced, but you don't need to worry about that, right? So this is the range that I was looking at because price is going to consolidate in this, especially if we're looking at search and destroy. What is unlikely to happen in search and destroy type conditions? Well, definitely previous highs are unlikely to be broken. And what's even more unlikely is that we're going to get huge breakdowns in market structure, right? In search and destroy type conditions, right? We may get a return back into a point of origin, which is what happened the previous day when we ran back into this order block. But that's a continuation trade. You don't necessarily need to trade this in order to be profitable within search and destroy. You can literally just trade this range, right? So what we're doing in search and destroy type conditions is taking a very tight range where we're not anticipating highs and lows to get taken because we're operating within search and destroy type conditions, and you're expecting a news catalyst to drive us through dealing ranges, okay? So we know that we're operating within inside this tight range, and we're simply using the inefficiencies and imbalances within inside that range. And what will happen is that price is going to fill all of them, right? So I often get asked, when do I classify fair value gaps as balanced? Well, in search and destroy, they all get filled, right? So what I'm looking at is this range. Where's the inefficiencies and imbalances in price and the order blocks within this range in order to frame trades? Well, this is, it's not by accident, right? It's not by accident yesterday that I was top ticking and bottom ticking ranges, right? And this doesn't necessarily just happen on this day, which was a tiny range. I normally do this over 10, 15 handles. You've seen it numerous times, right? You can carve out serious money if you get this down, right? And you can just add it to your armory, right? If you like trading long days, not every day is a range day, right? So I'm not going to break down how to trade search and destroy. I've already done that yesterday. What I'm talking about is SMT, okay? And what we're looking at is this fair value gap, which hadn't been filled. As I mentioned previously, in search and destroy, we're looking for all the inefficiencies and imbalances to get filled, right? So you can see when price ran down here, we filled this inefficiency into this order block, and then we're just playing liquidity tag, right? So this is why I got in here, this is why I got in down here, right? So this had been left open. So I was looking for 92, but because price was spending so much time in this area, I was looking to see what NQ was doing. And NQ, as we know, is the turtle suit king. So turtle suit is when it will take the highs, purge liquidity, and then break down, right? So let's have a look at the SMT. So this is, we're going to go through it once more. This is the old high. This is that high below that fair value gap. What had happened on NQ? NQ, we had a divergence on the highs, right? And NQ in this specific area where I was looking for price to punch up to 92 to go short, to take this low, but we'll get to it. Turtle suited this high and broke down. It was at this point I got out, right? So you'll see that I got out of this trade, right? So again, using SMT to manage my trade. One second, guys. Right, using SMT to manage the trade. So when NQ took this high, I got out, right? So then when NQ takes these highs, I'm looking and I'm reverting to the lows. Okay, I'm reverting to the lows. And as you can see, ES took this low. And this low was taken by YM. I'm looking for a clear divergence on the lows, right? Between two pivot lows. Okay. And you can see ES took it, YM didn't, NQ didn't. Okay, so now NQ has purged the highs, ES didn't. What am I looking for? I'm looking for this low to come and get taken. The low that ES had already taken. Right? Then I'm looking for NQ to run down and take this low, but respect a point of origin. Because if it's just going to melt through this, it will drag ES down. We'll have a market structure shift, and then it's likely that price is going to go run and take deeper discount, right? But because we've now got divergence here with ES showing relative strength with YM when NQ is running these lows. So we're now looking at this to this, this to this, this to this. NQ's taken this low that ES had already taken, but is now showing relative strength. My eyes are now drawn back up to the highs because they're all now in confluence. They're all now free to go and run the highs because they've all taken the lows. And search and destroy is simply playing liquidity tag. It's running down to the lows, tagging liquidity, moving, reverting to the highs, taking liquidity. Okay. So now this is when I was looking for 92, waiting for NQ to hold this point of origin, right? And as you can see, when we drag it along, ultimately price in the Asia session today runs into to a tick that fair value gap, which was the target earlier on that it failed when NQ turtle suited the highs, right? So this is where I was going to go short today. Now that they've all run and taken their highs, and what I mean by that is we don't need NQ to take this high. This high. We don't need NQ to take this high. Why? Because we're focused on this high, which is this high on ES. ES is now taking it. NQ had already taken it. YM had just turtle suited it. So now they're all in confluence to go and take the lows, right? They've all now fulfilled their objectives to go and now run the lows. Liquidity tag. Okay, so now we can look at the lows on what has been taken. Well, this low here, this pivot low, which is this pivot low on ES, have been taken on NQ during the overnight session. So when ES had run and fulfilled its objectives on the highs, we can now go and tackle this low because NQ had already taken it. And so had YM. Right? So this then becomes your target. So this is how you can effectively trade search and destroy using SMT in your favor. Right? Does that make sense now? Do you guys get that? You fully on board? You get it? Get it, you get it, get it? Alright, good. Alright, good. Well, if there's any questions, if there's not any questions, I'll wrap this little session up here. Any sessions? But I'm going to be obviously doing a breakdown on how to trade that inside Redpool University, and I'll also put this breakdown inside there so you guys have it as a reference point. But guys, I highly suggest you use that SMT inside the search and destroy type conditions, and you can literally trade using that. So yesterday I was long in this trade, right, for God knows how many hours. It was hours. Right? Where is it? Right? 10 to 1 o'clock. Right? Because simply on the basis that I was just staring at this chart and I was just waiting for NQ to hold this point of origin. Right? And as soon as it broke, that's when I was going to get out. Right? But as long as it held this point of origin, I was long until ES went and took the highs. Ultimately, time beat me and I got out here. But price ultimately ran that in the Asian session. That's when you could have gone short. All right, so guys, it's something I use all the time with search and destroy type conditions. It's how I trade it. So guys, that's going to wrap up this little session. I'll jump back into Red Pill and I'll catch you trading very, very soon. All right. Peace.